Hello and welcome back to another edition of Indexer Office Hours. Thank you all for attending. Today is the 27th of September and this is IOH 78. So I can see a few new faces and that's always lovely to see. If anyone here is new to Indexer Office Hours, this is the town square for indexers and ecosystem participants to come together and discuss topics that are relevant for indexers. In today's conversation, we'll be breaking the chat into 4 segments. Opening remarks, where I generally speak about any relevant topics that are interesting for indexers. Mostly I cover the latest 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗧𝗧 episode, which if you guys aren't already subscribed to that podcast, please do. And then we have Anna from the 𝗨𝗂𝗶 team who takes us through Repo Watch, which is effectively a section where we discuss the most important updates to relevant repositories for indexers. And then we hand it over to Juan, who's also from 𝗨𝗂𝗶, who tells us about the latest updates to important changes to the protocol. And then we finally top it off with an open discussion where we have 1 or 2 topics that we generally cover with some ecosystem participants. And at that point, we love participation. So you can either unmute your mic or chat in text. We love to hear your voice and your opinion. This is, again, like I said, a town square. And so we will have a conversation there. So as a reminder, just to let you know, this is recorded and will be shared on public channels like YouTube. So if you're concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, I'm excited to get into today's agenda. And so we have a 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗧𝗧 episode, which I would like to mention, which is number 83. And that is with Anne and Chief, who are both Wave 4 grant recipients, and they are both writing a graphic novel called Trust. Topics included in the conversation were about how they became interested in the blockchain and Web3 ecosystem, their experience applying for and receiving a grant from the foundation, and also why they're writing this graphic novel. I would recommend, if you're interested in learning more about what the process is like to apply and receive a grant from the foundation, to listen to this podcast, because as you'll hear, they discuss their experience and how it has gone for them. So highly recommend checking out that particular episode. And with that, I will hand over to Anna, who's going to take us into Repo Watch.
Thank you, Abel, and hello, everyone. So before we go into all of the different new releases from the clients we usually follow, a reminder for new participants that other clients that haven't had releases this week will not be mentioned, but you will still find all of the details of their latest releases on the agenda. And with that, going into execution layer clients, starting with Firehose ETH, we have had a new release, version 1.10. It includes a lot of fixes that were causing restarts and performance issues. It fixes the FireETH tool to download blocks from Firehose that was no longer working, plus a few other changes. That's the only change this week from the execution layer clients. So moving on to consensus layer clients, here we have had a new release on Lighthouse. This release is ROI, or version 3.1.2. It includes some optional payload pruning to reduce execution node timeouts. It includes optimizations to attestations and block processing, plus new flags. Some notes about this release. So first of all, we skipped the release. There is no release 3.1.1. This is because they found a bug and they fixed it before that release was ready, so they skipped. Another note about this release, if you're using Lighthouse, if you're downgrading to a previous version after upgrading to ROI, you can do so, but you need to be careful because you'll have to change your configuration to not pass pruned payloads flag and builder profit threshold. Moving on to the graph stack. For graph node, a new release candidate for version 0.28 has been is being worked on. Currently, it is being tested by a few indexers. I know, Jim, you have been running this release. Would you like to say a few words before we go into some of the changes?
Jim, are you there? Oh.
Oh, sorry. Okay, then I will go into the changes. All I saw from Jim in a previous message was that he hasn't seen any issues running on Girly testnet so far. I hope it's okay to share that. Okay, so first of all, there's a warning that once you upgrade to this release, you won't be able to downgrade to earlier GraphNode releases. And this is because a new database table for dynamic data sources has been added. So what that means is that for new subgraph deployments, dynamic data sources will be recorded under a new table instead of the previously used subgraphs that dynamic Ethereum contract data sources. So that's the biggest thing you need to be aware when thinking to try this version. In terms of what other things are new, so we have the file path, which too expensive queries are sourced from, is now configurable. There is an environment variable that you can use. Then improvements to Graphman query output, so that it's less cluttered. You have new flag options such as output and trace to get more detailed query information. Node IDs can now contain any character. You can now use the connection pool size option in TOML configuration file to configure your connection pool size for Firehose providers. And there have been some bug fixes. So Graphman stats now complains instead of failing silently when incorrectly setting account-like optimizations. There have been metrics added and other performance improvements. The Firehose gRPC stream requests are now compressed with the JZip if the server supports it. There have been some memory efficiency improvements with the entity cache, and identical queries now benefit from GraphQL validation caching. So that's a lot of changes. There you go. Jim said this has all been good so far. We haven't had any new releases for the indexer service and agent. So I would like to open up to the whole group to ask if anyone wants to mention anything about any of the releases we've discussed, and any issues with running any of them.
So just a note with the new version of GraphNode, if you want to enable the behavior to allow any character for the node ID, this would be typically done in a Kubernetes environment. There is still a substitution that happens within the start script that's bundled by default with the GraphNode container. So you're going to need to set an environment variable to essentially disable that. It's documented in the release. Furthermore, you'll need to use Graphman to, after upgrading to 0.2.8, to move your releases from the old node IDs to the new node IDs, because especially when they're automatically filled in from the host name, they will no longer have those underscores substituted in from the dashes.
Thank you for all of that, Kai. Anything else that we need to be aware of? And can I ask, Kai, have you run this version in a testnet?
I haven't run it in testnet. We have our own test cluster that we use to manually index subgraphs. I haven't had any problems with it on our manual cluster. It's been running pretty smoothly, actually.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. All right. In that case, I will hand over to Juan for Protocol Watch.
Thanks, Dana. Cool. So getting into Protocol Watch, we have a few things to cover today. First of all, from governance, we have an update on the process for specifying the subgraph API version and feature support matrix. It's an update from Adam regarding a few new ways in which the governance, aka the council currently, is going to be providing oversight to the particular feature matrices and other stuff, as well as providing some more clarity regarding how this is all going to work. So basically a GIP update. Next up, we have two different GDRs, so requests for information about disputes, that have been going for quite some time. I know, Jim, you bumped the discussion so that it can be resolved because it seems like it's been stale for a while. Yeah, it's a shame, but they have been going for a while without any updates, so hopefully we get new updates there. Going into forum research, there was a, I would say, feature request regarding delegation to be able to delegate the permissions to an alternate wallet so that any active delegation or curation for a particular address can be handled by another address. I think this is sort of like the way that the operators work for indexers, and it could potentially be something that allows, I would say, better OPSEC for delegators. Not entirely sure if this is extremely necessary now, but it does look like a cool feature request. Then there's also quite a lot of debate on the arbitration charter. There are some new changes that need to go into the arbitration charter regarding the new addition of the multi-chain story. So basically the epoch block oracle and everything that entails. But there have been a few notable feedback from the community regarding how the arbitration charter is not exactly working like it's supposed to be. So yeah, there's a lot of debate there. So if you want to provide some more feedback, that'd be amazing. Next up, we have the contracts repository. Again, I'm not going to go into detail because it's a lot of changes. Most of those changes, if not all, are just related to the L2 scaling story. The team is working extremely hard to get this done ASAP. But again, L2 is not easy, so a lot of changes and a lot of work. Regarding network subgraphs, we have no new releases since last IOH, and that's pretty much it. And I'm going to be handling back to 𝗟𝗶𝗀.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, as part of today's open discussion, we'll be discussing Mips. And for that, we have Pedro, who's going to tell us all about phase 0 and everything in relation to that. And then we'll open up for Q&A, and the community is welcome to ask any sort of question in relation to Mips. So with that, without further ado, I'd like to invite Pedro to the stage to tell us about phase 0. I see that you're not on mute, Pedro, but I don't think we can hear you. Perhaps there's something wrong with the mic. Oh, you want to try again? I think I heard something. All right, I see Pedro typing in the chat. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
I don't know what I've
Awesome.
done. It should be working.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I see
Good
what
to hear you.
I changed the settings. I have to keep on pressing space. Anyway, okay, yes, hi, thanks 𝗟𝗶𝗀. I can indeed share some more about phase 0. Abel, can you share your screen? I will send you a link you could open. Is that okay with you?
Yes, sir, I can indeed. I think I actually already have the link, but feel free to send it.
Yeah. I'm gonna paste it in the chat. Others might also wanna take a look at this. It's
Cool.
Yep, there you go.
All right, I'll get that on my screen and then I'll share. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect.
All right, perfect. So, yeah, so as you know, it is true we're still going through some of the KYC. You might have seen an announcement that I've shared in the Mips testnet channel regarding the agreement. We're also working on a new version, so that's going to be sent out in the following hours. Right now, however, we can get started with phase 0, and this Notion page that I'm sharing here, and I'm also posted in the chat, it's now public. This is the Mips homepage, so where you can follow up with the calendar and all of the information you may need for following phases and missions. As you know, as we go through the program, we're going to have a different set of phases and missions you have to go through. And depending on how you participate on those missions, you're going to get scored on how you do this. And that's the way how we will then distribute the GRT on a chain basis. And that's how we're going to compute the leaderboard. So that's a quick refresher on how the program will work. And so as you can see here, and thanks Abel again for sharing the screen. I see Jim is also streaming. That's perfect. Thank you so much. We do have a lot of people joining the call now. So hopefully that will work. If you can't watch Abel's screen, you should be able to watch Jim's. And yeah, let's go through this quickly. So let's first go, Abel, can you just go to the homepage or to the root page of this? Maybe click noses, yeah. You know how to navigate. Perfect. Yeah, Mips home. We can start there. Perfect. Okay. So this is the home page. This is the page we're going to be sharing with all of you. Right now it's public, and I would invite you to take a look at the calendar. Easier would be for you to just click on the Google Calendar subscribe link and subscribe to our calendar so you're notified of any of these upcoming workshops. And I do have some news about it. But yeah, right now, let's go to phases and missions. Abel, yes, thank you. And is it loading? Oh, it is. Okay, let's start with phase 0 then. That's the one that's starting now. As you can see on the date, this is supposed to end, to last until the 5th of October. And so this is the phase where we will just be essentially ensuring that you have set up the basic infrastructure to start serving this particular chain. So Abel, can you please scroll down a little bit? Yep, there you go. Thank you. That's fine. So there are 4 major services you will need to instantiate during this phase. That is GraphNode, you know, the basic component. We've talked about it in previous workshops. The Postgres service, that's a database, obviously. Prometheus as a time series DB, just and monitoring system. And then obviously the Noses chain archive node. Those are the first set of services you would need to instantiate. And the whole goal of this phase 0 is just for us to make sure that everything is working. And we'll do so by sending test traffic directly to your graph node during this phase. In following phases, you will be interacting with the protocol, and so you're gonna work with different software. But right now, the test traffic is going to be sent directly to your graph node, just to make sure that you are indeed serving queries already. So let's scroll down a little bit, Abel, and go through this quickly. In this page, thank you. Yeah, perfect. In this page, you can see here some useful information you should go through. Obviously, you need to instantiate run a new Noses chain archive node. It's highly recommended that you run yours for the program. And so here I'm pasting what Noses chain has shared with us. We have snapshots, so that's a very good news. And I'll actually pause here because I know Hannah from GraphOps might have some feedback on this. They've been testing it out. And I just wrote this section a couple minutes ago. So maybe Hannah can speak about this snapshot and how you would use the tool provided by Noses Chain to, just download the whole archive, uncompress the files, and then import it onto Nethermind so you can sync your client faster or have your nodes synced faster. Yeah, I'll pause there. Anna, is there anything you want to add here?
Yeah, just making sure I just changed the instructions.
Interesting.
Okay, you can see them. I think you can see them on Abel's node screen. So I just changed them to have all of the instructions. So from downloading all the way to fetching the archive and then decompressing it. So a few things to note. These instructions right now only work on Ubuntu. I know they're working on supporting other operating systems, but that's how it works right now. Of course, you can build the binary yourself. To fetch, so the download manager fetch the XDAI archive. That took about 5 hours to complete in on a node running SSD drives with ZFS. Then the uncompressing itself took another 4 to 5 hours, and I've been pointing Nethermind at the uncompressed archive file, and that has been processing the different blocks since this morning. So that would be about 3 hours. So so far I haven't had any issues whatsoever with it. That's about all I have, I guess. Maybe it would help if someone has any questions with the instructions, or yeah, just any questions or concerns, please let's discuss them.
I've got a quick one. I think I've sort of hinted at it last week, but maybe some people here can sanity check me. But my Gnosis node is 1.8 terabytes. I notice your archive is 2.1 terabytes. What size is for? Go ahead, Hannah.
It is 2.1 terabytes.
Yeah. So anyone else who's already got one running and at the chain head, what size is your? What's the actual disk space being taken up on your machine?
I think mine's fully synced. Let me take a look.
I'm just doing DFH en route to see, how much space is being used. And 1.8 T is what I get. I just want to make sure I haven't made a mistake, and then that's a mistake that somebody else might be able to make too, Anna, maybe some config mistake I might have made. Or sync the wrong chain. Yeah, Chris, like sync the wrong complete chain. That's the kind of thing I would do.
So I'm just sharing, I don't know if you'll see it. So this is the end of, I saved this after it downloaded the download manager, and this is the data I was seeing on my screen at the time, which suggests 2.1 terabytes. Did you use the download manager for downloading the chain? What was or was there other instructions you followed?
I just synced it from scratch. I mean, I wonder if it's pruned itself. Or do you know what your size on disk is, Anna? Is that something you can actually look at?
It's 1 second, yeah.
So Jim, I just looked at my node. I think ours pruned itself because I'm getting 131 gigs.
Oh, that's painful. Well, there's a snapshot at least, Kai.
Yeah, thank God for that. I'm going to be using that.
Looks like a few people are seeing the same sort of size as me. And yeah, Vince, I've also, I've been syncing and serving queries for a couple of days now or so. Haven't seen any issues.
Looking on the disk used for that location, it is actually 1.9 terabytes.
Okay, so maybe it's something to do with the difference between size on disk and the tar file. So there's some headers or something, extra headers. So no emergency here. It sounds like everything's good, Anna.
Okay. I will just double check the size of the archive as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen others reporting 1.8 when checking the actual file system, but the archive itself is 2.1. So maybe once the Nethermind client starts processing all of these blocks, maybe they prune something indeed. Regardless, if you're syncing using the snapshot, bear in mind you might need at least 5 terabytes just to download, decompress, and everything.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jim. Great question. Okay, so that's it. That's the Gnosis chain. I do have another update. We will have the Gnosis chain actually doing a workshop this Thursday, 5 p.m. UTC, same time. We're going to share all of the details for you folks to join this workshop. And I think it's going to be super helpful. They will, at least share some information on how to prepare for the merge, hopefully. They can also share some information on tooling that indexers might want to use that's tailored to their ecosystem. And yeah, I think that's a workshop that could be super useful for you folks to attend. So that's coming this Thursday. And I see Abel is already sharing the event. Perfect. Okay, let's scroll down then, Abel, please. So that's one. That's the Nethermind client using this snapshot file. Thank you, Gnosis Chain, for sharing this. Then obviously GraphNode. Up there you see thank you, Abel. Up there you see how you would configure GraphNode to work with Gnosis, and you can use the graphs IPFS. Feel free to use your own as well. Using ours is ideal. You'll see why at the bottom. So yeah, let's continue running for now. Scrolling a little bit. We're also sharing here the minimum hardware requirements you should get, like the typical server you would get, let's say, in terms of CPU cores, RAM, disk. We believe the small environment is enough to get started, at least for this particular phase 0. But bear in mind that you might want to obviously bump it up or scale it up. I don't know how you will be managing your software, but you could always scale it vertically at a later point. The small environment or the small setup should be enough. Okay, let's go through the successful completion and the actual ops here. How would you participate? So the first step is for you to go through a form that you see here in point number 2. There's also, this form is also at the top of the page. You can't miss it, or hopefully you won't miss it. And in this form, we're asking for a few things. One is the GraphNode endpoint, the Prometheus endpoint, and the credentials. So that Prometheus instance should be secured. By secure, I mean not only HTTPS, but also have some basic auth configured, like a username and password. You would share this with us so that we could then make sure that we can fire some traffic to your GraphNode and connect to your Prometheus endpoint to monitor that you are indeed, your infrastructure is working as intended. And so, yeah, those 3 services, and then you would need to sync some subgraphs locally. And for that, I have some instructions there as well. Abel, if you can scroll down a little bit. Yes, that's it. Thank you. So we have a list of subgraphs here, the ones that you should be syncing locally. And these are indeed the ones that we've already deployed to the new Girly testnet. So you can follow this Explorer link. But because you're not interacting with the protocol, you have to run those two curl commands I'm listing up there, which would allow you to essentially create the subgraph locally from an IPFS hash and then deploy it to your graph node instance or your local instance. Yeah, I hope that's clear. Obviously, I'm just going through this very quickly. We can now, we'll have time to do some Q&A. And let's go a little bit down, Abel. I think I'm nearly done. Yes, so taking a look at the timeline and as a wrap up. So this phase 0 is starting now. It will last until October the 5th, if I can see, yeah, the 5th. And then you will have some time to fill out the form and share all of those URLs and credentials. You can do so until next Monday. So the cutoff date is October the 3rd. And yeah, I believe that's all the information you need right now to get started really and successfully complete this this mission. Yep, I'll pause there. I guess that's all. I don't know if others have questions or want to add something here.
So for those of us that are still dealing with KYC issues, are we still going to go through phase 0, setting up the nodes and the infrastructure for indexing?
Sorry, it looks like I was muted. Yes, Kai. Indeed. While we sort out the KYC, you can still get started with phase 0 and deploy. It's just those 4 different instances, and I'm pretty sure we'll get through KYC during the following hours. The agreements have been sent, just that we have to fix the documents, but there's not a lot of KYC applications for us to go through. It's just those specific edge cases we couldn't catch before, but hopefully this will all get resolved in the following hours.
Okay, so the minimum for phase 0, get a Gnosis node set up, and then have it wired into your indexer infrastructure.
That's basically it. Yeah. And we'll be sending some test traffic to these graph nodes directly until the 5th. So you can set it up, and even if your Gnosis chain is still syncing, you just need to tell us what the IPs and the ports and the credentials are for us to reach your servers or server. And yeah, I mean, we will always be sending test traffic until then, so we will catch all of you based on the forms that you fill up. Oh, and I'm just seeing in the chat that Rebina just shared a new graph scan for Girly. That's amazing. This was super useful for Ethereum mainnet, and now we have one for Girly. So do check out the chat. Okay, so it looks like we don't have a lot of questions for this phase 0. Looking forward to get.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, Anna, go ahead.
So there is a question from Mark Andre. Is the speed of completion of the mission a scoring criteria?
Oh yeah, I missed that one. Is the speed of completion of the mission a scoring criteria? I can't tell for sure, to be honest. We can get back to you on that, but I can't tell for sure right now if that would be like a bonus if you were to set it up faster than others. Yeah, I don't want to give you a false answer right now, but what I can say is that I wouldn't worry too much, because I mean, we're sharing this snapshot now, and yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about completing it sooner, or being first to sync all of this. Vincent, you're asking if we'll actually be using the girly testnet at any point for Mips. Correct. So not for phase 0, but yeah, all of the chains will be adding support. The Mips program, like they will first be deployed onto girly. Correct. So Mips can test it out before we go on to mainnet. So you will indeed be able to use the studio even. Correct. Yes, Vincent. So the question is, so local direct testing first, then girly, then mainnet. Yes, that's true. Is having the archive node and the graph node preferred to be on different boxes? I mean, this has been discussed before. So if you have it co-located, you obviously benefit from latency. But scaling wise, it's all about how you manage your ops. Really, if you want to have multiple servers and scale horizontally, you could do so. It's not a requirement. For this phase 0, we will not be tracking how your architecture or how you are deploying things really. We just want to make sure that we can reach it, and you are indeed already serving queries during this phase 0. That's all there is to it, for now at least.
And we also have the questions from Big Jim. Can we get the clarification on whether we need to be an indexer when entering the program? And he plans to spin a mainnet indexer after the 10th. Is that acceptable? Do you know, Pedro?
Yeah, I'm reading it now. Can we get clarification whether we need to be an indexer when entering the program? Yeah, so it's not a hard requirement to be an indexer before joining the program, but as part of the program, you will be a mainnet indexer for at least for the chain you will be participating. Meaning that if you're starting with noses, if you want to go through the whole thing, which you should, you would go on to mainnet and thus be a mainnet indexer serving noses. So yeah, and that's the process for all of these chains that will be in scope of this program. But Big Jim, just to add on more and have some more clarity, we will be announcing when noses will be supported on mainnet, and that's going to be a different phase. There will be different missions just to be sure that you have indeed migrated. Yeah, and so obviously if you go through all of these missions and you successfully complete them, you obviously get more points, and you would score higher in the leaderboard and thus be entitled for more rewards. And there are other questions I'm still trying to read. We are still waiting on an updated indexer agreement being circulated. Correct. So the indexer agreement has been shared during this weekend, but there was a bug in the form itself. The new one, we're not changing the content of the agreement itself. It's just that you will now be able to sign it as you should have been able to in the first place. And we're nearly ready. When is the GraphOps Kubernetes setups going to be available? Okay, that's a good question. Maybe we can go back to the schedule here and take a quick look at what we have already in the calendar. But the GraphOps Kubernetes setup, I believe you're talking about the Launchpad, and maybe I'll defer that question to Anna or someone else from GraphOps.
Thank you, Pedro. We're still finalizing a few things with the Launchpad. We're trying to make sure it's tested properly so that when we share it with people, it's very well documented and tested. We're hoping to have something to show this week, but if not this week, latest early next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anna. Again, we will be sharing all of these in Discord. The Launchpad is something. It should be the next workshop right after Noses Chain. How do we send additional funds to a token lock wallet? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that question, Jim. A rewards wallet for mission control. Not sure I'm able to answer that question. If anyone else can help out, I'd appreciate. Maybe, I don't know if you have Martin on the call. Martin is not on the call. So Jim, I'm not entirely sure what your question really is, but if you can DM me, I can make sure that I will get to the proper answer. There are others that can certainly help you.
I think the question being asked is that certain people have a vesting wallet or contract that has not sufficiently the 100K tokens, so they want to top up, say, the existing 80K tokens that they have with 20 fresh tokens, rather than create a wallet with 100K tokens. This is a question that's been coming up in the Discord, and they're looking for very specific instructions. Do they just send over the difference in GRT to the smart contract address, or something else?
Thank you, Cohen. Yeah, I had the idea. I had the perception that was the idea, and I see that Martin has joined us now. Martin, were you able to catch that? That was a question that I think you're the suitable person to address.
Do you want to repeat? I just joined.
Sure thing. So the question was whether, for folks who do not have the 100K GRT in a separate wallet, if they could use like vesting contracts, like the funds that are currently locked, and use those funds, essentially like tokens that they got from mission control.
Yeah, that's possible for the mainnet section.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you can hear me, I believe you can simply do a transfer directly to the contract address and it can receive those funds in addition to what's in there. But I'm going to confirm that with our contracts team and try to get specific instructions to share with you guys on the Mips channel here.
Pretty sure that's what we were all doing at the start of mainnet launch, because we had no way to get rewards out, so the rewards were all just rolling straight onto the contract address.
Yeah, I believe that should work, but people should be aware that to unstake and pull these back to the beneficiary wallet, you would need to unstake everything, because the function to do that would be the release function, which looks at the total amount of GRT in your vesting contract versus how much GRT should be locked in the vesting contract. So the only way to really get that GRT back is to unstake everything and then use the release function. Which is why there was a big discussion early on in the network that indexers struggled with receiving their indexing rewards, and that is why we implemented the option to have a rewards wallet instead of having the indexing rewards going to the vesting contract.
Oh, I see. I'm reading Stakes Machine. I will add the proper instructions, like Ford said. That would be super helpful. We'll add it to the Notion page. And thanks, Orion, for your feedback. Do we need to deploy dedicated Prometheus for sharing it with the team? Yes, so you can create, yeah, we just need the endpoint, some basic auth to be able to reach it.
Nice.
And then once we're done with phase 0, you could even, that just delete that username. We won't be needing that endpoint anymore.
Why do you say?
Yo, you mentioned that it was only needed for phase 0. Is that correct? Does that mean it's not like a long-term requirement to have that Prometheus instance exposed?
I would update that to say let's keep those exposed throughout. We'll be monitoring those, especially in case of issues. It'll help us understand where they are and help you guys out. So to repeat that, that's not just for phase 0.
All right, thanks.
Stake machine, the network subgraph does allow you to query deployments for particular network. Could you clarify what you think is missing there? I've been doing that myself.
Probably I queried the wrong subgraph, but it returned nulls when querying for network information. I provided screenshot somewhere above in the chat.
Okay, cool. I'll try to find that. But yeah, so on the subgraph deployment entity, there is a network. There's a child that has the network, so you can use child filters to filter on the network.
Abel highlighted my screenshot.
Yeah, I mean your screenshot doesn't include where you're querying that from, so it's hard for me to debug that.
It's a graph network subgraph for Girly. I will provide link, right?
Cool. Yeah, I'll take a look. But yeah, that should work as long as it's the latest subgraph. So if it's not, we'll make sure to resolve that today.
This one.
I see a few people typing. Feel free to shout and unmute your mic if you'd like.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so it says that we can put basic art in front of the Prometheus. Can we also put it in front of the graph node itself, or otherwise limit it to specific IP addresses?
Are you asking for the gateway IPs?
I guess so.
Like, we're back here again.
Yeah.
Deja vu 2 years later.
Yeah, Koen, in this Notion page, I did write that we will hopefully be able to share more information on where the traffic is coming from, but bear in mind, this is not gateway for phase 0. So in this case, you can set up some basic firewall rules if you want to, but I can say we will be able to do so with phase 1, starting with phase 1.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way the gateways are set up and the proxies in front of it, I don't think we're able to have static IPs that will remain consistent across the whole program. So I don't think we can share a specific IP that you can allow in your firewall, as has been the case for a while.
But for just to be sure, that's phase 1, right? Phase 0 we're sending the traffic that's not being routed through gateways, so we can share an IP if folks don't want to have their graph node fully exposed.
Yeah, I can't promise right now it's all going to be something coming from the same machine.
We'll keep you updated in Discord if we can share some IPs. If not, then we won't.
I guess a question I wanted to ask was, in the Notion, I saw that you were doing sort of manual deployments in the instructions. I was interested to know why you were doing manual rather than using the agent. I've deployed the subgraphs with the agent, and it doesn't seem to have been an issue. Is there some reason why you wouldn't want to do that?
You could, Jim. In this case, we're just sharing the minimum, really, and not asking participants to instantiate the whole Indexer software stack. Agent,
Gotcha.
Service, CLI, all of that stuff. There's no need, really. But yeah, you could certainly do so.
Got it. Okay, understood.
Yeah, I would say this phase 0 in large part is directed to help new indexers get started, so they don't have to spin up the entire stack right away. So right now you can just focus on the graph node, focus on getting some subgraphs deployed and syncing, and then start to expand out from there into the next phases. But for experienced indexers, I wouldn't worry about trying to make your setup more contained. Feel free to use the indexer agent and the setup that you already have there.
I want to point out, Tim asked the question, is there a Stack Overflow type of website for questions about indexing, or a page on Stack Overflow for these kinds of questions? There isn't, but if there's something we like, is good docs and seeing the community helping out with all of these community-based sort of FAQs or docs. So you folks are more than welcome to kickstart that. That would be amazing. The community-driven. Yeah, Abel is sharing something similar. Docs.
Yeah, just to kind of share a few words here, if I may. So we've, as Tim mentioned, have noticed this kind of gap, and the link that I sent you is not working ATM, but will be shortly. We're compiling a list of FAQs to begin with, and then also a place where we record all of the Mips workshops and a few highlights from those workshops, and then perhaps even go as far as to create a Stack Overflow-ish place where you can ask questions to as well. Yeah, we noticed that there's a lot of questions that people have, and we want to make sure that they're answered in a way that's accessible for all and not just folks who regularly attend these calls. So yeah, it's coming, TBD, like it's being built. But yeah, great question, and totally recognize that need for sure. Yeah, Tim, you nailed it on the head. There's a lot of questions that can perhaps maybe be repeated and can be stored in FAQ, so we'll definitely share that once it's live.
Also wanted to point out, since this is being recorded, that and for folks that are on the call, in this page that we've just shared, there's also a link to a YouTube playlist where we're uploading all of Mips related workshops we're having and will be having.
Just shared a link to the playlist that Pedro was mentioning, so feel free to check it out. Okay, so we're just 5 minutes over the top of the hour. We do have an extra 30 minutes dedicated to Mips Q&A, but as you can imagine, we've been discussing that throughout today's conversation. So I'll do a final call for questions. So either you can type in the chat or you can shout, unmute your mic and just share the question if you'd like. Would be great to hear any sort of questions before we wrap. Oh, seems like there's a question in here for you, Pedro. From Slim Chance.
Yeah, Orion, I kind of answered that question. Maybe Martin knows, and if Martin doesn't, I believe Martin does. But if you don't, I can get back to you, Orion.
I will have to check and get back to us. Yeah, I don't know now.
I think we'll work on an FAQ we'll be adding to the Notion to this Notion page where you can start answer these questions, Mips wise. I was collecting a few. We were going to update the website, but feels like the Notion page might be easier. Yasir is asking what chains are part of the program. We will be announcing chains as we go along, and we'll give you time to prepare for the following chain.
So the next call is Thursday. Is that correct, Pedro? A workshop on Thursday.
Yep, that's right. Thursday, 5 p.m. UTC with GraphOps and the Noses chain team.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, like I said, in this page, you can subscribe to our calendar. We're keeping everything in there so you are notified on any upcoming workshop.